to another episode of The Inside. I'm Leo Das. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Extremely excited to have Kathleen Carroll join me. Kathleen and I have gotten to know each other over the past, let's call it 6 months, I believe, where she's been wonderful. And I've been privileged to have Kathleen write some really, really good articles when it comes to just really a different perspective than I've seen anybody write about within the industry. So excited to have Kathleen join us today and take this from call it the analog to the digital version of the conversation where we're going to talk about a couple topics of interest. So Kathleen, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So why don't we kick this off with your background and your story, introduce yourself. It's super interesting. You've been in the industry for quite a while. So would love to get your story and have people hear about it. So please do.
Sure. So I started in the industry, hate to say it, 1988. I started out doing public relations for companies in the security industry, Checkpoint Systems, which makes systems to stop shoplifting. But at the time, they also had an access control division. And I did the public relations for them as well. And so like I said, I've been in the security industry for a long time. Started my own business back in 1990 doing public relations, did that through the 2000s. Then I moved to Checkpoint, HID Global. And that's where I got involved with the privacy side of things. Part of the reason why they hired me was because at the time, California was looking to ban the use of RFID technology, which of course powered a lot of access control systems and in particular HID systems, or not HID. Yeah, it was HID. So that was the beginning of my involvement in privacy. I've gotten certified through the International Association of Privacy Professionals. So I'm certified in international privacy, in government privacy, and then just regular privacy. So it's been an interesting career so far. Then I got more involved with the Security Industry Association and currently chair the Data Privacy Advisory Board there now. And so I was really grateful, Lee, that you gave me the opportunity, because over the years, it's I felt like a voice crying in the wilderness about taking care to look at privacy and think about privacy, because it's even back in 2010, working with SIA, we developed a set of privacy principles for the security industry. So it's been a long haul.
Yeah. So I guess on that, I mean, it seems to be now sort of it's having its moment, if you would, right? Versus maybe back before where you all were somewhat of an odd bunch in the corner, wasn't talking about blue blinky lights, but talking about privacy. But as you look at it now, if you had to summarize sort of where we've come from and where we're at before we talk about where we're going, but give sort of your state of the union because I'm sure a lot of this stuff is sort of like, we told you so, but then there's also some new, but what's your current take on the current state as we are when it comes to privacy?
Okay, so I think the biggest change for the security industry has been this move to the systems being online and being connected all the time. So what that has done, it has created, the potential for breaches, which has happened multiple times. The most recent one is the Verkada, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, breach. But that's a problem. And then the idea that they're collecting that the security systems are collecting all this data, and a lot of that data now is being moved to the cloud and stored in the cloud. So all of this churn in the industry has created a perfect storm when it comes to privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me get your thoughts on this concept I keep hearing about. Is there's this belief that in order for us to have conveniences or to anything, that we have to somewhat give up some of the privacy or some of that. What are your beliefs on that sort of thing that people throw out?
Absolutely not. So mainly because And I forget who said it, but somebody said privacy's dead. Get over it, right? Somebody in the industry, and it's not, right, and it doesn't have to be, and it's one of the biggest things that I want people to understand is that privacy is not a monolithic concept, and it's also not rocket science, right? And so yes, you can have privacy with any kind of system, with any kind of security system. You don't have to trade off, right? They work together. They're complementary.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me because like our core mission as an industry, is a lot of things, but one of them is delivering safety, and I feel like we primarily do that based off of keeping bad people out, like physically, not to get shot, like things like that, right, of harm. But there's an aspect of it that is now around the privacy, about the people side of it. But there's constant tension, it feels like, around this idea that in some ways, in order to deliver this, to keep you safe, we need certain things. And some of that is you giving up some of your privacy so I can deliver you safety as I determine it. And it feels funky. I don't know the right term, but it feels funky.
Yeah, that's a good word. I like it. But it's not, you're not really giving up privacy. So I guess I think you have to go back and think about what the definition of privacy is, for people. And I think it's a concept of privacy means different things to different people. And so, I think one of the things that I saw that you had written was that, a lot of people are put off by these systems, that they don't like them. They think that we're invading their privacy, but they also want to be safe. Right. And so that's where it's not a trade-off, because so let's take an example. You have a physical access control system. And in that physical access control system, you have information about the person, right? And that information is to identify them. So then you're blending now with a physical access control. You're talking about identity management. You're talking about data security. You're talking about encryption, all these things that they can help protect privacy. So the fact that, people give their private information to get a 25-cent coupon, to get a deal on something, and they'll sign away their private information. So certainly people are willing to share their private information for safety and for security, but they want to know that system, that the folks running those systems, the folks building those systems, care about their privacy and are going to take care with their data.
So that leads to what sort of triggered our most recent conversation around in that my sort of aha moment, where we have an entire industry that and again, I would say majority of the people do this with good intentions in mind. From the ones that I've met within our industry, even the ones that have had problems, it's usually not aggressive, if you would, of trying to ruin people's liberties and privacy. So if we give the benefit of the doubt that people are doing this for good, it's met though externally, like we talked about, by the general public as creepy and bad, because there's a belief. So we've got we believe we're doing a good thing and bringing service and that, and it's going to be how wonderful it's going to be. And it runs, like positive world runs right into dystopia. And I my concern is that we're not building the systems or communicating with them or prioritizing the way that we are, we're not listening to the customer, I guess is a good way of putting it, right?
Okay, so
yeah, please.
Two things there. First of all, I think I don't quite agree with you that folks thinks that these systems are creepy.
Okay.
I think that a lot of times the media hypes the creepiness of these systems. And so, and we, because we're in the industry, we're paying attention to this and we think everybody feels this way. I don't think that's true, because,
Sure.
There's lots of people, and I'm one of them. I want to know, I have granddaughters, I have a son, and I want to know that my family is safe. And if a security system is going to help me do that, then, I don't think that's creepy. I like that. I'm glad, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is yes, I'm always reminded of railroad crossings and the warning signs. Stop, look, listen, right? And one of the things that this industry hasn't been good at is listening to what the customer says, what the customer thinks, not what the media is saying, not what the lawmakers are saying, what the customer says, what the customer wants.
Well, but is that fair to say though too? And this is sort of a thesis that I've been playing around with is historically our systems had no idea who the end user was because we gave them a card and it would come up to a reader and maybe it had, you know, a name associated to it. But the moment that it moved into the phone and now I'm bringing my identity and attaching it to that, and it is a representation of me, maybe the closest is biometrics that we had in that case, right? Where I was doing that, but we've never really built our systems to actually care what the end user thought because our job was to keep them safe. Now we have a different relationship with this end user that's engaging with our systems. And I wonder if the systems that of the past that we're using for the present were not built with that use case in mind. And we're trying to iterate privacy when fundamentally I can make an argument that you need to almost reset and build with that person at the center and then out. It's not necessarily something you can iterate on top of because the core part of a lot of these systems were to protect like missile silos and basically say, don't worry about it, Mr. and Mrs. End User. We've got you, just use this card and you'll be fine. What are your thoughts on that?
That's pretty funny. I like that too. So, you know, the idea that these systems are creepy, um, it does suggest that people think that we're taking their information and that we're using it for nefarious purposes, right? And the bottom line is that, and I think you said it best, is that, you know, people in this industry, when they develop products and services, they're doing it to keep people safe and secure. But the one of the key elements of privacy is called privacy by design. And so you're absolutely right. You cannot, I mean, you can kind of like bolt on after the fact, right? But it's not going to be secure. It's not going to really do the job for you. You have to start from scratch and you got to build. You got to build with privacy in mind. Privacy,
Yeah.
but you know.
I was going to say, so where do we go from here? But I do think that that's probably the best statement there for where we go is the privacy by design. And actually it's probably a term that a statement that or saying or whatever like that we as an industry need to be using more of not saying, is it secure or private, but sort of like, is this service, is this product including privacy by design? You know, we talk about the customer centricity a lot, right? But a key aspect of that would be the privacy of design. So let me ask you this though, as someone who's an expert in this, what does good look like? Like if you know, if you had to say, you know, like core tenants, like would we have websites like the companies, you know, being more open with where the data is going? Like what are best practices, or what does good look like as far as you're concerned?
That's a great question. First of all, stop collecting data you don't need. I think that's one of the first things that you do. It goes back to my warning sign: stop, look, and listen. So first of all, stop collecting data you don't need. Collect only the data you need to achieve the purpose of your system. Okay.
May I ask you something on that though?
Sure.
So this is interesting on that point, because I'll hear people say that, you know, data is the new oil. So I'm wondering though, do you think sometimes people collect the data they don't need because they're worried that they don't know if they will need it?
You can always go back and get it. You know, it's better, in my opinion, it's better to collect only what you need, because that way, and the security industry, this is the big deal, right? Minimize risk. So the first law of privacy when it comes to data, minimize the risk to that data. And the best way to do that, first of all, is not collect data that you don't need. And then when you do collect it, understand that that data, that personal data, and that includes geolocation data, it needs to be protected in and of itself. So encryption, if you're going to share it store it in the cloud, make sure that the cloud is secure, all of those things. So that's why I say privacy doesn't stand alone, security doesn't stand alone, they go hand in hand.
Okay, so the keys to it: design with privacy in mind, collect the data that you need, not all of the data, and then minimize the risk of it by protecting that data. Sound like good core tenets. What's interesting too there is now if I couple another trend that we're seeing, it's funny because my belief, our industry goes from on-site where sort of stuff was collected locally, it never got out, it's fine. Then we like hard shift right to the right, where now cloud, everything's going out, where, I believe a trend, or what it'll shake out to, and I'm, this is not a new idea. You see Apple talk about this a lot, and people where it goes with your collecting the data that you need. You go to the cloud when you need to, and you keep stuff local when you need to. And it's a hybrid approach to the architectures of what we do. But instead of talking about the architecture as hybrid, it's actually, what I'm surprised I haven't heard from industry is somebody grabbing that and saying our products are designed with privacy in mind. And we do that because we only collect the info that needs. We only go to the cloud when we need, and we're completely transparent and open to what's happening to the data. We haven't seen that, have we?
No,
I haven't. Yeah.
We have not. And that's a failure of imagination on our part, because especially with breaches, and we're all at some point, everybody's going to get breached, or it's endemic, right? And especially when you read things like that, these hackers think it's fun. It's like, excuse me, you're messing with people's livelihoods when you do that kind of stuff, and that I think is irresponsible. But that's just my opinion too.
That's a whole nother podcast.
I know, it really is. It really is. But privacy and security together, whether you store the data in the cloud or store it locally, it becomes, it's incumbent upon the owner of the data, not the processor of the data, who's holding the data, to protect that in the best way possible. And the other thing that the security industry also forgets about is the insider threat. So a lot of this data, even if it's stored locally, still needs to be protected, and you have to control access to the data. So it's not, so that's critical, because, the reason why the Axis powers lost World War II, a big reason why, was because they couldn't train their pilots. They didn't have enough planes to train new pilots coming on. And so the Allies won the air war absolutely because of that. Training employees and controlling access to the data internally is equally as important as protecting it in the cloud or in transmission.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I think it was Securing New Ground a couple of years ago. They had a presenter there that was talking about that. Everybody wants to talk about the external because it's somewhat sexier, or like you can point to it and it tells good stories. But a lot of these, it's the actual insider threats, like you said, is you're more vulnerable there than you are anywhere else, which is interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Well, this has been exactly what I was hoping, the type of conversation. So no, it's always great to catch up with you on this. This is an ongoing dialogue, and it's going to continue to go, and is extremely relevant at this point. And thank you for writing and sharing your expertise and wisdom. And thank you for the history of the industry, of the impacts that you've made along the way too, that don't necessarily always get highlighted, but especially you're seeing this, this new movement with women in security, but there's been women in security for quite a while at this point. But it's great to see that it's finally getting the exposure, if you would, and attention that it's needed. So thank you for what you've done in the past, and I'm excited to be doing this with you in the future. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, I no longer feel like a voice crying in the wilderness.
Yeah. So. No, it's wonderful. So encourage everybody to read everything that Kathleen puts out. And Kathleen, thank you very much for taking the time to do this, and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it.
Thank you.